Welcome to Gifted Underachievers, the podcast for mid-level creatives with delusional ambitions. This segment is the first in an episode on capacity and capacity building, which is a prelude to a much longer, more in-depth discussion Pat and I plan to have over the summer. This segment opens just after Pat has discussed jury duty and other things that impact our ability to get stuff done. She is relaying a recent conversation with her mentor, a paid 3-month engagement, where the mentor discussed being intentional in navigating the external must-dos that impinge on our capacity. Pat and James then discuss our impending capacity building experiment and how we think about capacity and that building it should not be an exercise in time micromanagement. The big value add in this segment is our discussion Heidi Fiedler's examination on Substack of the theories contained in Oliver Burkeman's 4,000 Weeks Time Management for Mortals book with regard to how to not feel overwhelmed and dissatisfied.
She said something like, you might want to think about planning ahead for stuff you know is going to happen. I'm like, well, I do. I mean, I plan my weeks ahead. You should see my fucking agenda. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
She's like, not just for the time spent doing the thing, but the rebound time. Like she said, she was, she had to take a flight and she knows that she's basically useless for a day after she flies. She just can't focus. So, she can do other stuff, but she can't really focus on work. So she books herself. She just changed her days. So she worked on the weekend instead of on the Friday when she would normally have worked because she'd had a flight on the Thursday. And I was like, yeah, I guess I could be a little more deliberate about that, but I'm already working weekends. So it's not like just for this period, the last 4 months or so. I did have a couple weekends off right after my mom went into hospice. Or after my brother left, I guess. So probably in March, beginning of March. But I just like, well, I don't think that would help. But there are stuff this time of year that I suppose I don't have to group together. So I have car insurance. I couldn't do it online, so I had to go to the insurance office. Also, I got my tires changed over from winter tires to regular tires because I would have left it, but my brother's going to be here next week with his family, and I'm lending him my car for the duration. Except I need to borrow it back a couple times, and the snow tires are just a little heavy, and then there's taxes that I kind of half-assed, and I need to check them and then get them to the accountant, and then there's just all these little time of year things. I need new glasses. I had to reschedule my appointment because it was just too many appointments, right? I'm like, fuck, But all of that kind of clustered, and now I'm like, okay. How's it gonna work? How's this gonna work?
I think this is something we should keep in the back of our minds for the expanding your capacity experiment.
Yeah.
Because I think part of that experiment, or I think probably where the value of the experiment is going to come from is the research and talking.
Absolutely.
Because, I feel like I don't know how to expand my capacity because I sort of, you always can identify things you can do better or be more efficient at, right? Like, you can count your minutes every day and be like, well, I looked at headlines for 20 minutes. If I got rid of that 20 minutes every day, that would add up to right?
Yeah.
But you need those little mental breaks. So, but I think, and like taking the extra time. So it's, for my dad, it's leave on Thursday, all day Friday, come back Saturday. And when I get back, I'm exhausted. And then the next day there's a little bit of, overhang. And then you're behind on work so that, when you get into Monday, you're already behind for the week. So you
I know
have
that feeling. Yeah.
that sensation. And it's, there's definitely a little bit, I'm not sure how I would fix that.
Expanding capacity. Yeah, because so I've been trying a couple of things. One is to work ahead. I'm lying to myself about deadlines. Um, it's not working that well because I know the real deadline. I mean, for paid work. And then for the reason I want to put a lot of bandwidth into my novel right now is I'm paying somebody to mentor me
Mhm.
for 3 months. Like this is the begin,
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
in halfway through that, a third of the way through that period. And if she doesn't see enough pages, it's like it's not a waste of money, but it's not as much of benefit as I could be getting.
Mhm, mhm,
So far I've been grinding the pages out, but they've gotten really shallow because I'm not giving him enough time. You know how when you write
mhm.
too shallow,
Yep.
it's just you might as well not bother. You're just like blocking in scenes instead of actually writing scenes. So I think there's something you'd be interested in. My friend Heidi Fiedler, I've never met her in real life. She's got this Substack called Nebula Notebook, and she's doing this sort of side project on Nebula Notebook about 4,000 Weeks, this book written. I don't know if you've read
Mhm.
4,000 Weeks.
Yeah.
It's about the fact that the average life is 4,000 weeks. That's how many
Mhm.
weeks you have in the average life. I don't know what age that goes to. I never did the math. But anyway, it's by a guy named Oliver Berkman. And she's going chapter by chapter through that book. And I think it's once a month. So last month, she discussed the different kinds of time that this guy describes in his
Mhm.
book. And it was very interesting. There's like he uses sort of even a German term for one of the types of time. There's deep time, Eigenzeit, two different things. Um,
Mhm.
And this chapter, I just got this newsletter, I think yesterday, the day before, is about chapter 2 of that book. And it's about the way striving to be efficient with our time only makes us feel overwhelmed and dissatisfied. It's
Yeah.
exactly what we're talking about. We tell ourselves we need to find a way to, I'm quoting directly from the newsletter.
Mhm.
We tell ourselves we need to find a way to get more done, and then we end up making ourselves even busier. Um,
Mm.
and many, like those of us who are parents, find that the more efficient you get, the more you become a limitless reservoir for other people's expectations. I actually substituted parents for the word mother. She uses the word mother.
Yeah.
But I know you're a parent and you're in a similar boat. If you've ever thought some version of once I get everything done, or if I can just clear the decks, this post is for you. And she lists these bullet point questions. Which responsibilities can you neglect? Who can you disappoint? What projects will you not
Yeah.
work on? What daily tasks will you skip?
Ooh.
What ambitions can you let go of? Is it okay to not excel at everything? Is exploring more important than finishing? And what if you never make progress? Um, and she goes on to talk about how, she sometimes feels like a lot of choices are made for her just by the nature
Mhm.
of her life, of like all of our lives. And you don't always get to choose what you sacrifice.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
Sometimes you end up sacrificing your creative work. That's the only
Yeah.
thing that you feel like you can let go of. But she's quoting the author of 4,000 Weeks, who says, once you stop believing that it might be somehow possible to avoid hard choices about time, it gets easier to make better ones. So instead of
Mhm.
avoiding these choices, Berkman recommends developing a kind of anti skill that involves a willingness to resist such urges, to learn to stay with the anxiety of feeling overwhelmed, of not being on top of everything, without automatically responding by trying to fit more in. And Heidi goes on to say that feels right, but also challenging in a world that insists we can fit more into our day if we do it right. Saying Berkman's larger point is that we're making these choices whether we acknowledge them or not. So we might as well
Mhm.
make them intentionally.
Yeah. Well, I think that's really fascinating. And I
Yeah.
think, um, you know, there's definitely the social media influencer angle, which is you're not being efficient enough. You should be programming everything and do things in 15-minute blocks, blah, 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 blah,
Yeah.
right? Which is going to drive you absolutely insane.
Yeah. It works
And,
for some people, doesn't work for everybody.
yeah, it works
Yeah.
for probably very, very few people. Like,
I
and it within very specific circumstances too.
I don't know if you can generalize that, James. It works. Can we not just leave it at it works for some people? Can you
I
generalize about who it works for?
I had to narrow it down.
Why?
It's my poli sci way.
No, well, you don't have the data to narrow it down.
You're right. You're right. So I backed off a little bit, but I think that the people who can do it are a certain type and in certain circumstances
Yeah,
where it lends itself to
agreed.
that kind of very programmed time approach. But not everybody can do that because not everybody's in that circumstance. So
Yeah,
to me, like it feels like I don't want to get into trying to micromanage each day,
right.
but I want to get, probably examine routines,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
See if there's ones that are shockingly more time absorbing with, and look at them from like a, you know, uh, what you're putting into it, what you're getting out of it, or, that kind of thing, like cost benefit.
Yeah.
And then, that yeah, and then being more intentional even if you don't have that choice, because one of the things I was thinking when you said that is, had my dad or your mom lived to the more natural age of say like 88,
Yep.
we would not the amount of time that each of us would have freed up
Mm. It's astonishing.
is astonishing.
Mhm.
And we would have had that sort of generational, I don't want to call it wealth, but whatever we would have inherited, we would have inherited. So that would have added to our, ability
Right.
and capacity
Yeah.
to do things.
Interesting. And so when you examine routines, you would, because that is a form of micromanaging. When you're actually noticing your routines, you've got to be pretty specific. You got to look at the clock when you start doing something, and then remember to
Mhm.
look at the clock when you're done, and then actually zoom out a little bit from what you were just doing and go, well, what did I actually get out of that? So it would require a couple of days probably of being
Oh,
micromanaging.
I think more, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, how long would you take?
Well, okay. So for example, one that comes to mind immediately is I'll go to the grocery store on Sunday, but then I'll be like, oh, I need to get this other thing, but it's at another store, so I'll go there on Tuesday. And then, oops, I need, I didn't know I was going to need more water for the bubbler, so I've got to go back to the grocery, so I'll end up making like 3 trips in 1 week to the grocery store.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
So if I'm not thinking about it, I'm just doing my chores, right? I'm just doing the errands and the things that you do.
Yeah.
But if I think about it, I'm like, I really should be much better about condensing all that into one trip.
Mhm, mhm.
And even though I'm a good at, making my list for the store, before I go and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not wandering around looking for things or buying more than I intend. I'm not probably doing it from the perspective of what do I need to add to this list and what do I need to search out so that I don't have to run back 2 or 3 more times this week, right? So that's one, right?
Okay, so you're saying it maybe a week you would do the
Yeah, so I
examination?
think probably 2 weeks. And then there's the other things, which are, like the caring for parents
Yeah,
stuff,
which are more
right?
sporadic sort of for you anyway, a
Um,
little bit. Oh, but you get all the
yeah,
phone calls.
well, I get all the phone call. It is every day, right? So even though I'm going to him sporadically, I am dealing with some care issue for him
Every day.
nearly every day, right? And so maybe I would find if I, log these things or whatever it is, that if I dedicate an hour on Thursdays,
Yeah.
right, instead of just trying to manage them as they come up. The trick to that is my dad will just call and call and call. Did you deal with it? Did you deal with it? Da, 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 right. And so that makes it hard. But anyway, so it's that I take to heart that intentionality,
Mhm.
even when I can't control. Like, we would both like to be freed of that obligation. But that, when and how we are freed of that obligation is sort of out of our control. But
Yeah.
we can be more intentional about how we approach it, perhaps.
Yes. Yes, and I do feel that I'm in a much better position in those terms since my mom left the independent living place, which is just like renting an apartment, but also there's a restaurant where you can go eat 3
Mhm.
times a week, and there's exercise classes and stuff. And when when she was living there, I was going fair amount, to help her with personal grooming and paperwork and just to talk to her, visit, that kind of
Mhm.
stuff. Now that she's moved to hospice, which is she's leaving, but to go to long-term care, not leaving the other way, not in the box.
Yeah,
Uh
not going out the back door.
yeah, you're probably in her wheelchair. Anyway, I just felt like, oh, I had to pick something. Either, I can't be in 2 places at once. When she was
Mhm,
closer she was only like, a 20-minute walk or an 8-minute drive. When she was in independent living, it was a lot easier for me to plan, and because she's got
mhm,
dementia, or at the time I thought it was early stage dementia, it's actually a lot more progressed than that, but, I always went the same time on Wednesday nights after work and the same time pretty much on Saturdays. Sometimes I had to switch it, but because they lose their ability um, uh, to sort of be anchored in time, and they lose
mhm,
their short-term memory, so you have to help build a scaffolding by the, regularity of your habits, and so that's why
mhm,
I pick the same day all the time. Anyway, my burden has lifted. I decided that I'm the only one who can run my business. Nobody else can do that. But I'm not the
mhm.
only one who can look after my mom. There's
Right.
hospice staff who can do that. So I have to focus where I'm the only one who can be the person doing it, and that's
Mhm.
really helped me actually. But you're in a
Mhm,
different situation because your dad is not in a safe environment. He's still in his house. He's blind, and he's very hard to get along with. So even people you've hired to help with his care they're tenuous. It's not for sure. He's not
mhm.
going to piss them off so much that they just leave, and then you've got to go through the whole process, which is incredibly time consuming.
Yeah.
So this reminds me of when we were talking about body time. Like, what were we
Yeah, chronotypes.
chronotypes? Okay, so
Yeah.
it's different though because any chronotype can examine their routines and see if some of them are, shockingly like time consuming without enough return. I do because I'm lazy. Uh, I do errands at the beginning of
Yeah.
the week. I think, or at the end of the week, whenever, because I do a lot of stuff on weekends. But I think, well, do I have to go to the hardware store? Yes, it's over here. Is there anything else over there
Mhm.
that I need to take care of? Because I also don't like to waste fuel.
Yeah.
So I don't, I'll try and chunk everything. My problem with that is it can eat up half a day. But that day would be gone anyway, and 3 different drives is not, is not,
Yeah.
or it's less efficient.
Thanks for listening to this segment of Gifted Underachievers, the podcast for mid level creatives with delusional ambitions. In the next segment, we'll continue our discussion of capacity by exploring complicated lives. We hope you give a listen. But in the meanwhile, we'd love to hear how we're doing, so please leave a comment, join our chat page, or send us an email at giftedunderachievers@substack.com. We'd love it if you'd hit the subscribe button. It really does help. And you can find us at Spotify, iTunes, and anywhere else you love to get your podcasts. Now on to number 2, or if you're taking a break, have an awesome day.